Hey guys, it's Mrs. Binford. We are going to be drawing a model, a representation today of the seasons that the Earth experiences as it revolves around the sun. We're going to start out our drawing with the sun in the center. So go ahead and draw your sun. And next we're going to draw Earth at 4 different locations. One above the sun, one to the right of the sun, one below the sun, and one to the left of the sun. There is only one planet Earth. However, for this model, we want to represent the different positions of the Earth at different times of the year. Next, to make this accurate, we need to add an axis to each sphere, to each Earth. The axis is the imaginary line that runs through the Earth at the north and south poles, and it is on this axis which the Earth rotates. If this were a basketball, think of the axis as the finger holding up a basketball that is spinning. We need to add an equator to each globe. The equator separates the Earth into a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere. The northern hemisphere is at the top, and we're going to label it that. NH for above the equator on each globe. NH for northern hemisphere. The opposite of the northern hemisphere is the southern hemisphere, SH. We in the United States, we are located in the northern hemisphere. We are going to start out with our seasons by drawing an arrow in between each of the spheres. This shows the Earth revolving around the sun in a counterclockwise direction, the opposite direction the clock ticks. We'll start out with summer for the northern hemisphere. If the northern hemisphere is experiencing fall, which is also known as autumn, we know that 3 months later, 1/4 of the way around the whole sun, 1/4 of the way after fall or autumn, 3 months later, we're going to be experiencing winter. After winter, 3 months later, we in the northern hemisphere are going to experience spring. And 3 months after that, in the northern hemisphere, it's our favorite time when we don't have school. That's going to be the summer. What's interesting about seasons on Earth is whatever is going on in the northern hemisphere, the opposite is occurring in the southern hemisphere. So, while we in the northern hemisphere are experiencing spring, in the southern hemisphere, they're going to be experiencing fall. When we are experiencing summer, the southern hemisphere is going to be experiencing winter. The opposite of fall, spring. And the opposite of winter, summer. Now, how can I just look at any of these without all of the words on it and know what season the Earth is in at that moment? Or which hemisphere is experiencing which season? Well, if I look at this one, for example, I see that the northern hemisphere, the axis is pointing away from the sun. Do you see how instead of being straight up and down, the Earth is tilted because of our axis? The northern hemisphere is pointing away from the sun, so it is not getting as much sun. So it's going to be cooler, which is why we're experiencing winter. Whereas the southern hemisphere, they're getting more direct sun, so they will be experiencing summer. And if we go 6 months into the future, it's the same, but for opposite hemispheres. In the northern hemisphere, when we are tilted 23.5 degrees toward the sun, we're going to be experiencing summer. But the southern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun. Just check out the axis. They're going to be experiencing winter. We still have a little bit to add to this. You need to know that at different seasons, we experience either long hours of daylight or short hours of daylight, or maybe the same number of daylight hours as night hours. So we're going to label that. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. In the spring, there are about equal hours of day and night. We call this the spring equinox. Equa means equal, nox means night, so the same hours of day and night, about 12 and 12. It's the same thing with the fall. In the fall, or autumn, it's equal day and night. Equinox. However, in the winter versus the summer, in the winter we have short daylight and long nighttime. We call this the winter solstice. Sol for sun, meaning that during the day we don't have a lot of sun. That's where we get sol from. And then the final season that we haven't covered yet is winter. And I know there's a lot of arrows on here. I hope it's not too confusing. In the summer, we experiencing long hours of day, and the nighttime is shorter. It's the opposite of winter. So think in the summer when you go to the pool, and then in the evening, maybe you hang out with your friends, the sun goes down a lot later. There are more hours of daylight in the summer than in the winter. This is called the summer solstice. The seasons work in opposites. Solstice, solstice, equinox, equinox. So in the course of 365 and 1/4 days, we go spring equinox, summer solstice, fall equinox, winter solstice. And the cycle repeats itself with a new year. This entire system in the course of one orbit around the sun is 365 and 1/4 days. And I would like you to write at the bottom, or wherever you have space, 1 full rotation equals 365 and 1/4 days, which is the same as 1 year. And that's it.